She slammed her car door so hard the whole street went quiet. "You're gonna pay for this, old man," her son shouted, kicking the edge of my fence. My jaw tightened, but I stayed calm. He had just backed his mom's brand new SUV into my mailbox, snapped it clean off the ground, and somehow decided it was my fault. Karen came marching out from her porch like she owned the whole neighborhood, waving her phone in the air. "You're replacing that bumper, or I'll call the HOA and get you fined for property damage," she screamed, her sunglasses sliding down her nose. I looked at the broken mailbox, then at the tire marks in my grass. "Ma'am, your son reversed into my property," I said quietly. She smirked. "Not according to my security footage," she said, pointing at the fake camera on her garage, "just a plastic dome with no wires. You people think you can move into this community and do whatever you want." I clenched my fists but didn't say a word. Her son, maybe 19, was recording me with his phone, laughing. "Yeah, keep talking, Grandpa. The HOA's gonna love this." Then Karen shouted, loud enough for the whole block to hear, "You hit my son's car on purpose." That's when my neighbor across the street peeked out, holding her dog. I could feel everyone watching now, waiting to see me snap. But I didn't. I walked slowly to my porch, pressed the doorbell camera button, and said just loud enough for her to hear, "Good thing my cameras never miss a thing." Her face changed. She hesitated, then whispered to her son, "Delete that video." He looked confused. "Mom, what's wrong?" She didn't answer. She just pulled out her phone and started calling someone. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "The HOA president is my best friend. And when the police get here, they'll see who's really guilty." I smiled faintly. "Oh, I'm counting on that." The sound of distant sirens began to echo down the street. Her son's grin faded. Karen folded her arms, confident. "You're done, mister. You're about to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong family." If only she knew who she was talking to. Because I wasn't just some retired guy with a nice house. I was the man who trained half the local police force. And they were about to show up any second. The first police cruiser pulled up, lights flashing red and blue across the street. Karen straightened her blouse like she was about to win an award. Her son puffed his chest out, pointing at me before the officer even got out. "That's him. He hit our car and threatened us," he shouted. The officer stepped out, a young cop named Daniels. I recognized him immediately. He froze for a second when his eyes met mine, then whispered under his breath, "No way." Karen didn't notice. She stormed toward him, waving her hands. "Officer, arrest this man. He vandalized my property and yelled at my son. I want him charged now." Daniels looked at me, still unsure how to handle it. I gave him a calm nod. "Go ahead, son," I said softly, "do what you think is right." Karen smiled wide, like victory was already hers. But Daniels suddenly stood straighter, cleared his throat, and said, "Ma'am, with all due respect, I need to see your proof first." "Proof?" she barked. "His mailbox broke my car. Isn't that proof enough?" Daniels glanced at the SUV, then at the bent metal post in my yard. "Actually, it looks the other way around." Karen's face reddened. "Excuse me, I know my rights." I turned slightly, letting the wind brush my jacket aside, exposing the small badge clipped inside my belt, an instructor's credential from the State Police Training Division. Daniels noticed instantly. He gave me a small nod of respect. Karen didn't see it. She kept shouting, "You cops always side with these people. My family pays HOA fees. We follow the rules." Her son muttered, "Mom, maybe we should just quiet," she snapped. "He's not getting away with this." Daniels sighed. "All right, ma'am, if you'll calm down, we can check both your security cameras." She froze. I knew that was her weak spot. My cameras weren't recording today," she stammered. Daniels raised an eyebrow. "That's odd. You said you had footage." Karen's confidence cracked. I meant, they usually are." Before she could finish, another cruiser pulled up. Out stepped Captain Morales, the same man who had once trained under me 10 years ago. Karen's jaw dropped as Morales walked straight past her and shook my hand. "Sir," he said respectfully, "good to see you again." Karen blinked. "Yes, sir." Morales turned slowly toward her. "Yes, ma'am. This man is a retired federal police instructor. He's the one who taught most of us the law you're trying to quote." Karen's son took a step back, face pale. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. Just then, Morales noticed the SUV's rear bumper, cracked, paint from my mailbox still fresh on it. "Looks like we've got our truth," he said. "Ma'am, you'll need to step aside while we document the scene." Karen's mouth trembled. "You can't, this is my neighborhood." Morales glanced at me, then back at her. "Not anymore, it isn't." And that's when her son whispered something that made her spin around in shock. "Mom, he's recording everything." Because I was. And I had been since the moment she opened her mouth. Karen's face went white as I slowly turned my phone screen toward her. The recording showed her son kicking my fence, her screaming about fake HOA rules, and her threatening to make me regret it. The video even caught her saying the cameras weren't working. Daniel's body cam light blinked red, capturing every second of her silence. Her son tried to snatch my phone. "Delete that. You can't film us without permission," he yelled. Daniel stepped forward, blocking him. "Touch that phone and you'll be charged with assault." Karen clenched her fists. "You people don't understand who I am," she shouted, her voice trembling. "I'm on the HOA committee. I can get any of you thrown out of here." I couldn't help but laugh softly. "You just threatened law enforcement, ma'am." On camera, Morales crossed his arms. "She also filed a false police report, intimidated a neighbor, and damaged private property." "That's 3 separate charges, Karen." Her son panicked. "Wait, you can't arrest her for that. It was just an argument." Daniel's tone hardened. "Then why'd you lie about who hit the car?" Karen turned toward him, eyes wild. "Because he doesn't belong here." The street went silent. Even the neighbors, who had gathered quietly at their porches, looked disgusted. One woman whispered, she finally said it out loud. I shook my head slowly. "You really could have just apologized," I said. Karen's lips quivered. I didn't mean." Morales raised his hand. "Enough. You've said plenty." Daniels read her rights as the handcuffs clicked, the sound echoing down the quiet road. Her son stood frozen, tears starting to form, realizing it was over. As Morales guided her to the cruiser, she turned her head and hissed, "You think you've won? The HOA won't let this go." I smiled faintly. "Then I guess they'll need to talk to the new HOA legal advisor." Her eyes widened. "What?" "Yeah," I said calmly. "They hired me last week." Her jaw dropped just as the door shut behind her. The cruiser pulled away slowly, red lights reflecting off her perfect white fence. Her son stood alone on the sidewalk, silent and pale. I walked up to him, looked him straight in the eye, and said quietly, "Son, lessons don't always come from teachers. Sometimes, they come from mistakes." He swallowed hard and nodded. I'm sorry, sir." I put a hand on his shoulder. "Make it right next time. That's all that matters." As I turned back toward my porch, Morales called out, "You still got it, sir." I smiled. I never lost it. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because what I found in my mailbox the next morning would make the whole story explode again. The next morning, the air felt too quiet. The kind of silence that makes you feel watched. I stepped outside with my coffee, expecting peace after last night's chaos, but instead, I froze. My mailbox, the same one Karen's son had wrecked, was standing perfectly straight again. New post, fresh paint, shiny metal. Except, there was a single white envelope taped to the front. No name, no stamp, just 3 words written in red ink, "This isn't over." I tore it open. Inside was a printed HOA violation notice, unsigned, undated, claiming I was being fined $2,500 for harassment, property damage, and public disturbance. At the bottom, it said, "Issued by HOA enforcement." Only, there was no HOA enforcement. I chuckled under my breath. "So, she's still playing games," I muttered. I walked back inside, turned on my computer, and pulled up the HOA database. Being their new legal advisor meant I had access to everything: names, minutes, internal notes, emails. And right there, in a file labeled, "Private Complaints," I found it. Karen had filed dozens of fake reports over the past year, targeting neighbors, threatening fines, even forging digital signatures from other board members. But one detail stopped me cold. The system showed an active administrator account still tied to her name. That shouldn't have been possible. She was supposed to be suspended after last night. She had remote access. I grabbed my phone and called Morales. "Cap, she's not done. She's in the system." He sighed. "I had a feeling." We'll look into it. But before I could say anything else, my security system beeped, a motion alert at the front yard. I checked the camera feed and froze again. A black sedan was parked across the street, engine running. 2 people sat inside, one holding a phone aimed directly at my house. I zoomed in. The driver looked familiar, it was the same young man who'd been filming last night. Karen's son. I stepped outside slowly, keeping my phone recording in one hand. Morning, I called out. Forgot something. He rolled the window down halfway. My mom's lawyer says you're gonna pay for ruining her life, he said coldly. You think this is done? It's just starting. I stared at him for a long moment. Tell your mom, I said quietly, the truth has a funny way of catching up. He laughed. We'll see about that. The car sped off, tires screeching, leaving a cloud of dust behind. I walked back to my porch, staring at the letter still clutched in my hand. There was something else written on the back in faint pencil, barely visible. It read, if you don't leave this neighborhood by Friday, we'll make you. That's when I realized, Karen wasn't acting alone anymore. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me check the window. Headlights flashed by, dogs barked in the distance, and the whole neighborhood felt tense, like it was holding its breath. Around 2 a.m., I finally gave up on sleep and walked into my office. The glow from my security monitors lit up the room. Every camera was running, front yard, back gate, driveway. I wasn't taking any chances now. Then, I saw movement on camera 3. 2 silhouettes near the fence line. One tall, one smaller. Moving quietly, like they'd done this before. I zoomed in and my stomach dropped. It was Karen's son again, and another man I didn't recognize. Both wearing hoodies, carrying something metallic. They stopped by my new mailbox. The taller one whispered, hurry up before he wakes up. I turned on my porch light from my phone. The light burst through the darkness, and both of them froze. Hey, I yelled through the outdoor speaker. You really want to do this again? The shorter man dropped what looked like a crowbar. They bolted toward the car parked at the end of the street, but I was already dialing Morales. Captain, it's happening again, I said. They're here right now. He didn't hesitate. Stay inside. Units are on the way. I walked to the front window, keeping low. The sedan's headlights flared as they tried to speed off, but a police cruiser turned the corner just in time, blocking their path. Another car followed from behind, boxing them in. Within seconds, the flashing lights painted the entire street red and blue again. I stepped outside just as the officers pulled both of them from the vehicle. Karen's son looked terrified this time. The older man, bald, muscular, mid-40s, was cursing under his breath. Daniels recognized him instantly. Sir, that's Mark Benson. HOA security contractor. My heart sank. So that's who Karen had pulled in. She'd brought in one of the HOA's hired guards to do her dirty work. Morales arrived moments later. He looked at me, then at the scene. Guess the message on your mailbox wasn't a bluff. I nodded. They were about to vandalize my property again. Or worse. Karen's son started shouting, you don't understand. My mom told us to scare him. She said she'd fix everything if we made him leave. Morales's face hardened. He just confessed. He turned to his officers. Book them both. As they were handcuffed, I noticed Karen's son trying to get my attention. She said she has something that'll destroy you, he muttered. Some file, something about your past. I frowned. What file? He didn't answer, just hung his head. When the cruisers pulled away, Morales put a hand on my shoulder. You okay? Yeah, I said quietly. But I think she's still one step ahead. Because the next morning, before the sun even rose, I got an anonymous email. No sender. No subject. Just a single attachment named, federal_record_confidential.zip. I stared at that email for a long time, the cursor blinking beside the name like a heartbeat. I'd seen enough setups in my career to know what it meant. Karen was making her final move. I opened the file carefully, ready for anything, but what I found wasn't what I expected at all. Inside was a folder of fake documents, altered training reports, edited photos, even a falsified letter claiming I'd been dismissed from federal service years ago. All of it designed to destroy my credibility. But whoever made them forgot one small detail. Every official report I'd ever signed carried a secure digital watermark only accessible from the state database. And these didn't have it. I smiled bitterly. Nice try, Karen. I forwarded everything straight to Morales, along with the metadata and my security footage from last night. Within hours, the police had traced the files to a laptop confiscated from Karen's house earlier that morning. She'd apparently been working on the fake records right before they came to arrest her again, this time for forgery, harassment, and attempted blackmail. When Morales called to confirm, I could hear the disbelief in his voice. She really went all the way down this hole, didn't she? Yeah, I said quietly. She didn't just cross the line, she buried herself on the other side. 2 days later, the whole neighborhood gathered outside as the moving truck came for what used to be Karen's house. Her "for sale" sign leaned crooked on the lawn, half broken like her pride. The same neighbors she'd bullied for years now stood watching with quiet satisfaction. Her son sat on the steps, head down. I walked over, set a bottle of water beside him, and said gently, "Don't let her mistakes become yours. You still have time to turn things around." He looked up at me, eyes red. "I didn't know she'd go this far." "I believe you," I said. "But believing isn't enough. Learn from it." He nodded slowly, and for the first time, didn't look angry. Just tired. A week later, the HOA held a public meeting to elect a new chairperson. The board voted unanimously to dissolve the old leadership and bring in a full review team. When they asked me to stay on as a legal advisor, I agreed, but on one condition: no one ever gets unchecked power again. That night, as I locked my gate and glanced down the now peaceful street, I felt something I hadn't in months: silence that didn't feel dangerous. Just calm. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "It's over." Then, with a small smile, I added, "Funny thing about justice, it might take its time, but it always shows up." And that's how Karen's reign ended, not with a scream, not with a fight, but with the one thing she never expected: the truth catching up.